All right, it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. Let's give a few more minutes for some more people to get online. But thank you all for tuning in. All right. All right, nice. I'm seeing people in the chat. Hey, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Hey, everyone. So we'll start at 5 minutes past, and then we'll get started. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm seeing a lot of people coming in. So, hey everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm one of the DevRel engineers at the SWE Foundation, and I will be emceeing this first workshop of the Overflow workshop series. So we'll be hosting a series of workshops where each workshop will be presenting a specific technology that we offer on SWE and in the community that you guys can use to build in your hackathon projects. I'm really excited, and all the workshops will follow the same structure where we'll be presenting the technology, and if there's time and if there's questions, we'll host a Q&A at the end. But yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, and we will get to them if there's time at the end of the presentation. So I'm very excited to announce the speaker for our first workshop, Lola, who is the director of product at Miston Labs. And she'll be going over Enoki and zkLogin today. So thank you, Lola, so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And please take it away.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you about Enoki. As Daniel said, I am a product person at Miston Labs. My scope is to look after our commerce, consumer, and gaming product areas. So my team looks after any first-party apps that are built by Miston Labs, one of which is Enoki, which I'll talk about in a second. But we also pay attention to making sure that there are demonstrations of any capability of Miston Labs tech, so anything to do with either of our protocols, SWE or Walrus, or ways in which we think people might be able to adopt our tech to do things beyond the kind of traditional, what may have been seen before in blockchain. So today I'm going to introduce you to Enoki. I will walk through how we got to Enoki a little bit so that you understand our thinking, but also where we're going with Enoki, so you understand what you can expect to see from that product in the near term. And yes, there will definitely be time for questions at the end, so I look forward to answering any questions from anyone today. So quick agenda. I know in last year's Overflow Hackathon, Joy, who is somebody that I work super closely with, did a really detailed deep dive on zkLogin. That video is still available on YouTube, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it today. I'm just going to give you a quick primer on it because it is a big part of what Enoki does. Then we'll talk about Enoki's purpose and its audience. I'll give you some hot off the press usage insights for us, and then talk about the things that are coming next, as I mentioned. So zkLogin, for those of you who have looked into it, terrible name, as everything in blockchain and crypto typically is. Zero knowledge login essentially allows you to create wallets on SWE with a sign-in with Google, Twitch, Amazon, Outlook and Kakao are technically possible, but only available in DevNet. And what it means is we've removed the need to have kind of passphrases, private keys that you have to remember and keep separate and split up your secrets in different words. And we give you a much simpler login in the same way that you would log into any other application and just say, oh, I can sign in with Facebook. I'm going to do that instead. It is a wholly private system. So we do not put any personal data, no names, no email addresses, or anything associated with that particular credential onto the Sui blockchain. We also don't let the credential provider know that you have created a wallet on chain. So this is a completely self-contained system where we use the existing OpenID OAuth structure to create a wallet for you, but we keep the details of who you are and whether or not you've got a wallet separate from the right people in the right places. So you get this kind of very private infrastructure. We also, using Amazon Cognito, can provide what we call custom credentials within zkLogin. So if a company has an existing account structure and they want to offer, let you log in with, I don't know, your airline credentials because you've got lots of air miles in there, we can also build zkLogin into that kind of system. So we can provide a private company, in a sense, with a credential system that works like we do with signing with Google, but we're doing that just for their infrastructure in their environment as they want to use it. So zkLogin is fairly flexible. One of the things we hear the most from people who are more familiar with blockchain is, what about if your account is compromised? What about, can I access my private keys? Can I do this myself? The feedback we typically give is zkLogin has been designed for a retail audience. So in a world where there are lots of different ways that you can secure access to an application, we've opted to use one that offers maybe slightly less security than managing your own private keys or using a hardware wallet. But the goal is that it's designed for a less blockchain savvy audience. So these are people who do want simpler signing, who aren't doing sophisticated things, who aren't expected to be managing tons of crypto assets. And so the security model and the security concept is much lower and much more designed around casual, everyday usage built for applications as opposed to intensive DeFi and financial transactions. And nothing that Enoki does prevents any application or any builder from integrating more sophisticated and higher level security paradigms in your product. We just wanted to offer something that was the absolute lowest barrier to entry for the majority of users, and that's what zkLogin does. As I said, Joy has got a much more detailed hour-long talk on this, talking about all of the specific elements that have gone into making this and why it is so trustable and secure. From our perspective, all you need to know is that what we offer in Enoki is we put the foundational elements needed for zkLogin wallets and a few other things inside a SaaS solution, so a software as a service solution called Enoki. From a zkLogin perspective, that means that you do not have to worry about the credential management, so you don't have to worry about which credentials are available. We test all of the credentials. We make sure that they're reliable, scalable, and working with Sui. You also don't have to manage any computational magic around the prover. The prover is a circuit that is available for any application on Sui. So this was done with a zero-knowledge ceremony. And for those who are super into the cryptography, if you have questions on that, I can answer them a little bit later on. And then the final key part is salt management. And salt management, for anyone who isn't aware, is basically just, can I add a unique identifier for a single account? In our case, Enoki bundles salt management, so the user doesn't have to set another password. The application developer doesn't have to worry about storing salts. All of that is done by Enoki, so it simplifies access to just the basic features. Can I get blockchain wallets and use them in the way that I'm interested in? So that's the kind of way in which Enoki uses zkLogin. Now, the reason we created Enoki is the Mr. Labs founding team have always had this vision that we want to bring the next billion users on chain. And I think for any of us who've been in blockchain for a while, we've got about, 13, 14, nearly 15 years now of fairly slow growth. When you think about internet adoption, like the proportion of people who use blockchain technology versus the rest of the internet is absolutely tiny. And so we have a fundamental belief that the next billion users are going to come on chain via apps and businesses that are fairly large and have wide reach in Web2, i.e. off blockchain. And so Enoki is designed to serve these businesses ultimately. And we think they're going to come from the worlds of gaming, commerce, social, hospitality, finance, and so much more. So if you're familiar with Sui, you know, we have massive investments in gaming. I'm also working on, we're shipping the Sui Play 0x1 device later this year, which is like a handheld gaming device. We think gaming offers us one of the first real opportunities to demonstrate blockchain technology integrated into an everyday experience that people love and enjoy. But beyond that, we see loyalty plays from retailers. We see social media companies trying to integrate asset management or creator payments. We've seen hospitality, also loyalty. And interestingly enough, we also see TradFi have taken an interest in some of the tech, like zkLogin, like sponsoring transactions, like giving their consumers access to crypto assets. And so all of these very large businesses, they have a few things in common. They care a lot about user needs and user experience. So they are constantly trying to grow. They need more customers every single year. And one thing that I tell my team a lot is that a lot of these people, they don't actually have a bull and bear cycle, right? So traditional markets, yes, will boom and bust to a certain extent, but their need to acquire new users, their need to invest in marketing and user retention, that is a perpetual need. So they are always spending money in this space. And Web3 does offer them some interesting capabilities. It's a little bit scary, but they are very, very interested in what Web3 can do as part of that process of growing and retaining their customers' attention. They all also have a lot of consumer protection responsibilities and compliance requirements. So whereas we talk a lot in the blockchain world about decentralization and kind of non-centralized experiences, the reality of managing everyday consumer experiences in the world outside blockchain is often having to meet legal, regulatory, and compliance mandates that are just not optional. It's not a choice to opt out of them. It's very much a part of doing your business. And so when they don't understand decentralization well, or when they integrate poorly with blockchain, they also risk being out of compliance. And so they've got a lot of care about how to make sure they maintain their requirements as it relates to keeping customers safe, for example. And then the final thing is their tech stack is already complex. If you're already running Netflix, if you're already running Walmart, it honestly doesn't matter if I'm going to tell you that Move is one of the easiest smart contract development languages. You don't have the time to get your army of 20,000 engineers to learn a new language on their weekend, because you've got to keep this shop running. You've got to keep your existing tech stack running, and you're often dealing with a lot of legacy tech. Now, in the conversations I've had with all of these companies and in my previous experience, actually, the most important of all of these is the first one. So you will adapt your tech stack as you need to, because it's do or die. You will also do your best to remain in compliance at any given point in time, but depending on where you're operating, which countries, which political parties, regulations actually change. So the number one thing that the company controls at any given point in time is how well they're innovating and how much they're trying to acquire net new users. And so why would you bring blockchain into this landscape? It's exactly what I said. It's because that innovation landscape is quite a big one. And there's a lot of research that talks about the movement away from like using cookies, what companies are doing to try and make more interesting commitments, make more meaningful commitments and connections to their customers. And the fact that actually a lot of companies are just petrified, but they've kind of run out of ideas on what to do. So from our perspective, one of the things that we've kind of codified is a very simple model. The way we see it inside the blockchain industry, we have wallets, we have assets, and we have transactions. And all of this is completely, essentially anonymous. It's just a massive ledger of activity. But for these brands and these businesses in Web2, they can look at it as a different type of paradigm. It's a world where wallets are a proxy for users, and there are ways in which you can tell a Sybil or a kind of a robot account versus a human account. Assets are also signals of behavior. So the assets that you're collecting, the assets that you're trading or swapping or spending or whatever it is that you're doing, they're signals about things that you're interested in, care about, and applications you're engaging with. And the transactions also tell a signal about the level of investment. So looking at blockchain, even though it's complicated, even though it's scary, even though it might change the nature of their tech stack, is actually pretty much an imperative for a lot of these Web2 businesses. And so we've branded it as it's the creative service that every marketer and CTO needs. And Sui, obviously, we're very proud of it. We have focused a lot on building in the user experience that we think Web2 applications do so well whilst providing Web3 superpowers. And that's exactly what Enoki is. So we've kind of packaged Enoki to offer these companies primarily the best possible onboarding experience available in Web3, taking away a lot of the friction that would prevent an everyday user from getting into a blockchain-based experience through a key set of features essentially that simplify that. And so what happens is, as a company, you would sign up for Enoki, you would pay a monthly subscription in fiat, and you get API keys. So rather than having to learn how to write net new smart contracts for wallet creation and wallet management from scratch, we'll just give you some API keys to be able to create wallets, and for using any of the credential providers that we support. That's also available in testnet and mainnet, so you don't have to spend any real money on mainnet if you're still just messing around and testing applications. We give you SWI-NS subnames, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but this is another feature that means instead of saying to a user, here's your 32-bit hash for your wallet address, which nobody's ever going to remember or make sense of, but also there can be copy errors and copy paste errors and security implications in just using the first 4 and the last 4 digits. We've seen some sophisticated attacks that way. Subnames allow you to provide more social, more friendly naming conventions for wallet referencing, and crucially, sponsored transactions. So the concept of gas is, for me personally, quite powerful. So, we know that the internet is not free, has never been free. You're simply paying with your attention or your data. And blockchain changes that by making everybody pay for gas. However, paying for gas and a custom crypto asset is going to stop most people from coming into the experience in the first place. So Enoki also allows an application developer to essentially put some money behind the transaction, meaning that their users don't have to worry about gas. And crucially, as I mentioned, it's a fiat monthly subscription, and the gas amounts that you buy in Enoki are in US dollar right now. We'll talk about other currencies down the line. It's primarily because most business accounts are still in fiat currency. Most people aren't paying their staff in crypto. They're not necessarily paying their utility bills in crypto. And when they do their monthly accounts and their annual accounts, they need to see fiat amounts for it to make sense. And so we've focused on making Enoki a fiat-based payment structure to simplify that process of being able to offer the service to these companies as well. And so what that means is every paying subscriber can basically give completely free entry to their users using Enoki behind the scenes. So Enoki is not front door, their application is front door, but by using Enoki, no user ever has to pay for any on-chain transaction. There are no TPS restrictions, so you can basically get as many users as you like in the door. There are some computation and what we call it, like some API limits, and this is to make sure that you're on the right package for your needs, so your user base as such, but there's no limitation to using the actual SWI network itself. The other thing that I talked about is the name service. So SWI-NS names, if you guys aren't familiar, maybe you've got a .eth name, or you have even like a traditional domain, yourname.com. Well, in the SWI world, we have .swi, and I think it was early last year, we actually changed the naming paradigm for names and subnames so that you could offer this kind of setup. So you could have Anna at ABCD. If you are Netflix, I could have Lola at Netflix. That is the address for my wallet. If I wanted somebody to send me something into my wallet, I would simply have to share Lola at Netflix. So it makes it so much easier to make wallet addresses shareable and referenceable. It's kind of like if you're in the US and you're familiar with it, the sort of Cash App simplicity for transferring money into the SWI ecosystem. And then crucially, one of the things that we thought about, because Enoki is ultimately a developer product, it is designed to make development on SWI easier, is that better developer experience leads to better user experience. So we've made Enoki as simple as possible to use. That means there is an actual portal that you log into. You can see all of your apps. You can access any of the API keys. You can get access to the SDKs that you would need to download to integrate the features in the languages that you expect, supporting most React JavaScript environments. And then also the developer docs are packed with examples and useful ways for you to think about using the Enoki setup to build your application. Now, the key thing about Enoki is it's not trying to be blockchain in a box. It's trying to be a gateway to get these businesses and these applications using blockchain But then we actually want to expand that and say, what can they do now they're on Sui, and how might they be able to make the most of Sui? So the Enoki model is designed to actually work a little bit like old school WordPress, or maybe even Shopify, if you're familiar with that ecosystem, where there's like a very thin layer of what Enoki does. And then once you're in, you actually have access to, you name it, what would you like to do on the Sui blockchain for your users in your app's context. And that might mean that you want to integrate interesting features around closed loop tokens. You might want to have fully on-chain games. You might want to make the most of things like time capsules and other features available on Sui. But you can now do that without having to worry about the complexity of kind of connecting those experiences to your users. And so Enoki gives you the gateway, but then any number of builders and solutions can be plugged in on top of Enoki to make that experience more meaningful for your applications. And so it's an infinitely scalable setup in that regard. Now, as things stand today, we've got about 800 teams in Enoki with over 1,000 users. So each team can have a number of different users with different rights and levels of access. There are over 700 applications, 600,000 zkLogin wallets. And since Enoki launched around this time last year in full, we've had about 37 million sponsored transactions on mainnet. So that's a lot of activity. And just last month was our largest month yet. So about 4 million transactions were done on mainnet. This is live applications, putting users through, fully sponsoring their needs. And the most interesting thing here is, I know I talked a lot about Web2 businesses and companies that really want to integrate blockchain, but are a bit scared. What we've seen actually is, despite a lot of our narrative speaking to this other audience, we've actually seen a huge amount of adoption from Sui-first builders. So people who are blockchain natives, who are comfortable with blockchain tech, who are building and writing smart contracts in Move, who don't necessarily have the same fears as Web2 companies, are utilizing Enoki. And I think it's because of the same premise, right? If you're trying to acquire retail users, if you're trying to go after people who aren't familiar with blockchain and you want to build a business that's more than just, I hope my crypto token goes up in price, you're going to be thinking about user experience. You're going to be thinking about building a foundation that makes it really easy to get people in the door. And so Enoki is serving that need for both native builders on Sui and companies who are trying to utilize Sui for existing products in their world as well. So it's emerging as both a developer and a marketer specific solution, is the short answer there. And so as we look to our roadmap in 2025, we're actually going to prioritize some of those developer needs that we've heard over and over again a little bit more. So we're going to be integrating some RPC services. Now, this is basically just to simplify the process for what we've seen from our builders. We know there are amazing RPC providers in the Sui ecosystem. The goal here, again, is to make sure that there are options for every type of builder. So the RPC services will be bundled in, and then depending on when you're launching a campaign or you want to do something that might increase demand, you might be able to scale up as needed. We're also going to be integrating embedded wallets. Traditionally, a zkLogin wallet is not a wallet application. It's just an account on the blockchain for your user. But what we have seen is that people want to be able to do more application-like things. They want to be able to send, receive, swap, maybe make more of a fully featured wallet application experience. And so we're expanding with something called Enoki Connect that will allow you to build a wallet inside Enoki that can connect to lots of other apps and do more traditional blockchain wallet things. So we're going to introduce that capability to give you just more optionality on what type of wallet experiences that you want to deliver. And for those of you who are following closely, we launched the Walrus storage protocol just last week. That is now kind of part of Mr. Labs' vision to kind of build a fully decentralized internet. We've got Sui as the internet's computer, and then we've got Walrus as a storage capability to support Sui and other things that are coming down the line. And so we're going to integrate the ability to publish on Walrus, so being able to say, I want my users to play this game and store their data on Walrus, and I'm going to bundle that inside my Enoki subscription. But also Walrus has this great feature called Walrus Sites that allows you to essentially use your data to publish a website. So kind of like a small hosting service. And so that will also be possible, allowing your users to potentially create their own mini websites inside your application as you want, and it will all be bundled in. And again, the focus right now is thinking about how companies that are still thinking about fiat-based economies can access these services. So it's all about API keys, simplicity, not having to write too much on-chain specific programming code and smart contracts. And so we'll make that all available inside Enoki. And we'll see what the growth is going to be. There'll be some refreshes to the website, and we're excited to welcome in as many people from Overflow as possible as well. We can't wait to see what you guys can build, and hopefully Enoki makes it that much easier for you to kind of get past the wallet creation step and focus a little bit more on the experience that you want to build. So what will you build on Enoki and Sui? And that is the end of the speaking part.
All right, thank you so much, Lola. It looks like we have a question in the chat. I think this is about embedded wallets, but the question, I'll highlight it here, it's, will this be utilized for the Sui OX1?
So yeah, the SuiPlay 0x1 is the gaming device that I mentioned earlier on. So this is an initiative between Mr. Labs and the Playtron operating system, which is a fully flexible gaming operating system. We are offering a device to market, and it is actually already using Enoki. So when you go to buy the SuiPlay 0x1 today, you have to create a Playtron account. That is a custom credential for the Playtron OS, and that is actually utilizing Enoki to create a zkLogin wallet under the hood, and we drop an NFT into that wallet. So it is already using Enoki, and it does give us flexibility to introduce subnames, which can be placeholders for gamer tags, and make that a little bit more flexible as well once the OS comes out later this summer.
All right, great. If there are any more questions, please write them down in the chat and we can address them. All right, it looks like, oh, here we go. I'm new here. What is Sui in short? We'll have other workshops where we can explain what Sui is in general. Okay. It looks like we don't have any more questions about the Enoki or zkLogin. Well, thank you so much again, Lola, for taking the time and introducing us. Personally, as a user, it's made the experience on Sui a lot better. And as a developer that wants to bring the best user experience, it's also a great tool. So I'm really excited for you all to integrate Enoki into your hackathon projects. I'm really excited to see what you guys build. And thank you again, Lola.
Thank you all for having me.
All right, thank you all. So this was the end of the first workshop that we'll be hosting in this Overflow series. I will be hosting the next workshop, which will be featuring Walrus, and that will be on the 4th, April 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm excited. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'm excited to see you all at the next workshop. Thanks.